Welcome. This is Chapter 1 of The Introduction to a Devout Life by St. Francis de Sales. The title of this chapter is The Description of True Devotion. You aspire to devotion, my dearest Philothea, because being a Christian, you know it to be a virtue extremely pleasing to the Divine Majesty. But since small faults, committed in the beginning of any undertaking, grow in the progress infinitely greater, and become in the end almost irreparable, you must first know what the virtue of devotion is. For since there is but one true devotion, and many which are false and deceitful, if you cannot distinguish that which is true, you may easily deceive and amuse yourself in the following some fantastical and superstitious devotion. As Aurelius painted all the faces of his pictures to the air and resemblance of the woman he loved, so everyone paints devotion according to his or her own passion and fancy. He that is addicted to fasting thinks himself very devout if he fasts, though his heart may be at some time filled with rancor, and scrupling to moisten his tongue with wine, or even with water. Through sobriety he makes no difficulty to drink deep of his neighbor's blood, by detraction and calumny. Another considers himself devout because he recites daily a multiplicity of prayers, though immediately afterwards he utters the most disagreeable, arrogant, and injurious words among his domestics and neighbors. Another cheerfully draws his alms out of his purse to relieve the poor, but cannot draw meekness out of his heart to forgive his enemies. Another readily forgives his enemies, but never satisfies his creditors but by constraint. These, by some, are esteemed devout, while in reality they are by no means so. As Saul's servants sought David in his house by Michal, laying a statue in his bed and covering it with his clothes, made believe it was David himself, so many persons, by covering themselves with certain external actions belonging to devotion, make the world believe that they are truly devout, whereas they are in reality nothing but statues and phantoms of devotion. True devotion, Philothea, presupposes not a partial but a thorough love of God. For inasmuch as divine love adorns the soul, it is called grace, making us pleasing to the Divine Majesty. Inasmuch as it gives us the strength to do good, it is called charity. But when it is arrived at that degree of perfection by which it not only makes us do well, but also work diligently, frequently, and readily, then it is called devotion. As ostriches never fly, as hens fly low, heavily but seldom, and as eagles, doves, and swallows fly aloft swiftly and frequently, so sinners fly not at all towards God, but lie groveling on the earth, with only earthly objects in view. Good people, who have not as yet attained to devotion, fly towards God by their good works, but rarely slowly and heavily. But devout souls ascend to him by more frequent, prompt, and lofty flights. In short, devotion is nothing else but that spiritual agility and vivacity by which charity works in us, or we work by her, with alacrity and affection. And as it is the business of charity to make us observe all of God's commandments, generally and without exception, so it is a part of the devotion to make us observe them more fully and with diligence. Wherefore he observes not all the commandments of God cannot be esteemed either good or devout. Since to be good he must be possessed of charity, and to be devout, besides charity, he must show a cheerfulness and alacrity in the performance of charitable actions. As devotion, then, consists in a certain excellent degree of charity, it makes us not only active and diligent in the observance of God's commandments, but it also excites us to the performance of every good work in an affectionate alacrity, though it not be of precepts, but only of counsel. For as a man newly recovered from any infirmity walks as much as is necessary for him, but yet slowly and at his leisure, so a sinner just healed of his iniquity walks as far as God commands him, yet slowly and heavily, till such time as he attains to devotion. For then, like a man in sound health, he not only walks, but runs and springs forward in the way of God's commandments, and moreover advances with rapidity in the paths of his heavenly counsels and inspiration. To conclude, charity and devotion differ no more from each other than fire does from flame. For charity is a spiritual fire, which then inflamed is called devotion. Hence it appears that devotion adds nothing to the fire of charity but the flame, which makes it ready, active, and diligent, not only in the observance of the commandments of God, but also in the execution of his heavenly counsels and inspirations. And so concludes Chapter 1 of St. Francis de Sales, An Introduction to a Devout Life.